Welcome, my friends, to another edition of the Wellness Talk podcast. I am George Batista, your host and your wellness advocate. Every condition there is, especially in mainstream medical, right? In mainstream conventional medicine, there is a narrative attached to it, right? We see that with pretty much all conditions. So when they look at the narrative of what causes a certain condition, they say, this is the cause, this is what we think it is, and these are the drugs that fit that, and these are the drugs that manage that, or whatever the case may be. Again, that's been happening for 100 years in mainstream medicine. Well, on this program, as I've been doing from the beginning, I've talked about alternatives to that. And I pretty much do everything here by science. I do it here by studies. And I show you different alternatives to it that are not being discussed in the mainstream. Why? Because, again, there's narratives. There's a lot of money being made. There's a lot of things going on in mainstream healthcare, and they basically push aside any of the alternatives. And this is why shows like this exist, and this is why many other shows and many other nutritionists and doctors are doing different shows, and very successfully, by the way, because people are starting to look for alternatives. People are starting to look for ways to take responsibility for their health and use nutrition, use lifestyle medicine. It's becoming more popular, especially now with RFK and everything that's going on in the new administration, and more of the transparency that's going on now. So today we're going to discuss brain health, and I'm going to take a different tactic with it, and I'm going to talk about natural solutions that are being ignored. And this is going to be from two pieces. The first one is from the Alliance from Natural Health, and this is the Alzheimer's Prevention Cover-Up, Why Natural Solutions Are Being Ignored. So we're going to take a look at that. Are natural solutions being ignored? Why are they being ignored? And what are those solutions? And what are the studies that back that up? Again, on this program, I always give you the science, I always give you the studies, so you guys can take a look at it for yourself. So we're going to take a look at some of the numbers with Alzheimer's and dementia. What are the studies? What are the things that people are using? What are the alternative solutions? And why you should be looking at that in terms of prevention and or support. Then the second piece is from orthomolecular.org. And this is most dementia is driven by diet, not genes. Again, now we're going to look at the gene aspect, right? The whole genetic theory. You know, again, we see a lot of these conditions, a lot of doctors say, well, it's genetic. Your grandfather had it, your father had it, you're going to have it. Well, is that the case? Again, we're going to take a look at some studies here, and we're going to answer the question, what about genes? And how does nutrition, how does lifestyle medicine affect your genes in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia? Is there something you can do, even at the younger ages, to prevent it? That's the big questions we're going to be asking today. I'm also going to play a clip from Cheryl Atkinson. Of course, she does some great news on these types of things as well. So jam-packed show for you today, lots of information. And those of you who are looking for, again, alternatives, those of you who are looking to use lifestyle modifications and lifestyle medicine to drive down your risk for certain conditions as you get older, check this information out because I think it is worth your time. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Of course, go to georgebatista.com. Make sure you check everything out because, again, of course, all the articles are there. And remember, the articles are there, but I also cite references, so you can take a look at the references. You can take a look at where that's from. Because remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to give medical advice, and I make no medical advice. I don't make claims here. I don't give medical advice or anything. What I do is I give you the information, and it's your job to take that information and to apply it and or pass it along. That's the number one thing we do here on this program. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you do everything you can to share this information. And if you have loved ones who are dealing with any of these issues that we cover, give them the information. Let them discuss it with their doctor as well. Or maybe they have, and maybe they're looking for some validation or whatever the case may be. But at least we're giving the information, providing the information. That is the number one thing. And those of you, by the way, I usually never say this, but those of you who want to donate, you can click on the button to donate to us as well. If you feel this information is of value and you're getting a lot out of this, I always appreciate when you guys donate, and thank you so much for those of you who do. Many of you do, by the way. It's much appreciated because it goes right back into the show to keep this show a premium show and to keep the information flowing to you. So thank you so much. All right, guys. So before we get started, I want to talk about our friends at Proton Mail. If you're looking for an easy-to-use alternative to big tech services and their surveillance business models, check out Proton Mail. Most popular email providers scan the content of your emails and use your email address to create a detailed profile on you and profit from your data, but not Proton Mail. Proton Mail believes your data belongs to you. Proton Mail's end-to-end encryption and zero-access encryption ensure only you can see your emails. Not even Proton can view the content of your emails and attachments. Proton Mail is protected by multiple layers of security and trusted by journalists, security experts, and millions of people around the world. I use Proton Mail to conduct all my business online. Check out Proton Mail today at protonmail.georgebatista.com. Again, that's protonmail.georgebatista.com. If you value your privacy, check out Proton Mail today. All right, so let's get started on our discussion today. And again, the first article is going to be from the Alliance for Natural Health. This is the Alzheimer's Prevention Cover-Up, Why Natural Solutions Are Being Ignored. So we'll run through the numbers. Every 3 seconds, someone in the world is diagnosed with dementia. And despite over $40 billion spent, no cures on the horizon, right? Pharmaceuticals, left and right here, and people are still waiting for real hope. It's a problem, okay? And then we have these Alzheimer's drugs. Matter of fact, in 2003, 98% of the drug trials had failed. And some of these breakthrough drugs that they've been talking about really don't offer much improvement. As a matter of fact, they offer actually, mere fractions, maybe less than half of 1 point as far as, improvement. And it's a big deal because there's a lot of stuff now going back and forth regarding drug approvals, approvals and things like that. And should these drugs have been approved and what's going on? As a matter of fact, I'm going to play a clip now before we go further from Cheryl Atkinson. She did a great piece on this, and I've played it before in the past when I've talked a little bit about Alzheimer's in the past. But I think, I think I should play it again, as a lot of new listeners, a lot of new viewers who are checking us out for the first time may have not seen that. So it's a quick clip. It's about 1.5 minutes, but she goes through the drugs and she actually talks about the approval process and what's gone on. So check this out from Cheryl Atkinson. Great piece here.
An update to our reporting on 2 recently approved Alzheimer's drugs, aducanumab and lecanemab. FDA advisors and many independent watchdogs said there's no good evidence the hugely expensive shots make a meaningful difference and they could cause serious side effects, but the FDA approved them anyway. Recently, the FDA approved a 3rd controversial Alzheimer's drug, donanemab, sold as Kisunla, given as a monthly IV infusion. The watchdog group Public Citizen says that like the 2 other controversial Alzheimer's drugs the FDA approved in the last couple of years, Kisunla doesn't prevent or reverse Alzheimer's, isn't much better than a placebo, and has substantial safety risks, including bleeding in the brain and brain swelling that can be fatal and outweigh any supposed benefits. In a statement, Public Citizen calls FDA approval of Kisunla very disappointing. The prescribing information includes the strongest warning the FDA requires about these serious risks. Donanemab should not have been approved. Dr. Caleb Alexander was one of the FDA advisors who voted against approval of the first Alzheimer's injection, aducanumab. He's an epidemiologist, internist, and professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
And in fact, 3 advisory committee members of the 10 or 11 or however many were on the committee, 3 resigned in protest of the FDA's decision.
Aducanumab has since been pulled from the market. The FDA says lecanemab and the newest one, Kisunla or donanemab, are safe and effective.
It's a great piece, but when you see stories like that, it doesn't give you a lot of hope, because there is not a lot of hope, unfortunately, for people suffering with this issue, with this illness, right? Not a lot of hope in these drugs. So, obviously we want to take a look at prevention. What can we do? What can we do to lessen our risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, and these types of, or just cognitive decline in general? Now, the other argument is genetics. Many people will say it's genetic, right? Because Many times mainstream medical, when they can't point to a specific cause, they're going to say, well, it's just genetic, right? Maybe your grandfather had it, your father had it. And then, you know, of course, they'll try to jog your memory. Like, oh, yeah, maybe my grandfather did, you know, deal with cognitive decline. So it's in there. Well, let's take a look at this. Less than 1% of Alzheimer's cases stem from inherited gene mutations, according to this article. Even the widely discussed ApoE4 gene only modestly increases risk. It far from seals your fate. And that's with a lot of issues. That's with a lot of illnesses. So let's take a look at this now. We'll take Alzheimer's, for example, which accounts for 2/3 of dementia as an example. There are only 3 genes that can cause Alzheimer's: the APP, the PSEN1, and the PSEN2. And these account for considerably less than 1 in 100 cases of Alzheimer's. The single greatest predictor, and this is again directly from these articles, the single greatest predictor is the presence of the ApoE4 variant of the ApoE gene, carried by 1 in 5 people. It is considered to be or contribute to 4 to 6% of the absolute risk for Alzheimer's disease. So we have the ApoE gene now. We have this, but it's in 1 in 5 people. Let's remember that, okay? So let's keep going with this article here. It says predicting risk and actually reducing risk with modifications of diet and lifestyle are 2 different things. The predictive risk for Alzheimer's of having a low intake of seafood and or omega-3 fats is 22%, and so is having a low intake of B vitamins, resulting in high blood homocysteine levels. Smoking confers a similar risk. Other big factors are an inactive lifestyle and low levels of education. Add in predictive genes, and apparent risk adds up to well over 100%, partly because there is overlap. So we're seeing here, they're talking about the risk, okay? But when you look at it, the genetic risk is small. It's small, okay? Is small. And now we want to see, how does lifestyle affect that? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at some studies. So we have this here. It says modifying the ApoE4 with orthomolecular medicine. Even if you have a gene variant such as the ApoE4, it is more like a dimmer switch and can be overexpressed or down-regulated, turned up or dimmed down. That is why approximately half of women with the BRCA gene, we all know that, develop breast cancer and half don't. The environment the gene is exposed to makes all the difference. That is the thing you got to be taking a look at. Okay, now, another piece to this, and a lot of doctors, a lot of people don't realize, sometimes when you go to get someone checked for dementia, right? And the reason why I know this is because we've gone through this. My mother-in-law is dealing with dementia right now. Is many times they don't exhibit signs and symptoms in a doctor's office. Now, a doctor may take 10, 15 minutes with them, and they may not exhibit symptoms, and they may go through tests. But even those tests, they may not exhibit symptoms, or at least anything resembling dementia. And then they may tell you, well, yeah, there may be some slight cognitive decline, maybe some slight dementia, but it's not that big of a deal. But when you bring them home and you're dealing with them for hours, days, weeks, and you see their decline and you see the things they're going through, it's a different ballgame. Doctors don't see that, right? It's the caregivers that see that. It's the people who, their loved ones who see that, the loved ones who are with them every single day who see that. It's only when it really gets to the advanced stages where you start to really, get some major symptoms, right? But a person who's dealing with light dementia, you carry on a conversation with them, but they may repeat themselves every half hour or every hour, and they may think the same thing or they may ask you the same questions over and over. But again, many times in a doctor's office, you won't see that. So just keep that in mind as well, that sometimes these symptoms are seen by the loved ones, but they're not seen by a doctor. So, and again, this is what we went through. Now, let's take a look at nutrition. How does nutrition factor into this? And can nutrition play a role in helping with Alzheimer's and dementia? Well, we're going to take a look at some studies. 6 supplemental nutrients have reasonably good evidence of downregulating ApoE4, which is that gene. There are omega-3s, which is DHA, B vitamins, B2, B6, B12, and folate, D3 and K2, quercetin, and resveratrol. So those are the big players in terms of reducing your risk of, especially if you have that gene. So let's take a look at some studies here. So there was a recent study in China involving 29,000 people, of which 20% had the ApoE4 gene. Each participant had their diet and lifestyle assessed over the 10-year period of the study to see who would or wouldn't develop cognitive decline or dementia. The study showed that whether or not a person had the ApoE4 gene, Alzheimer's gene, made no difference to the positive reduction in risk achievable by simple diet and lifestyle changes. So it made no difference if they had the ApoE4 gene or not. The lifestyle risk or the lifestyle modifications actually really made a positive impact on that. I also talked about that in terms of Dr. John Lewis. I played it last week. John Lewis, who was on our program, who did a study with between 30 and 40 people, and he talked about the reduction in cognitive decline just by using a supplement. And he wasn't even doing any lifestyle modifications. He was just using a supplement. Unfortunately, he couldn't get funding to do more studies on it, but he saw the real outcomes of this study, and it was in 6 months and then again in a year. So it's doable. It's doable. And if those of you who didn't see that, check out last week's show, and I actually played a clip of what he talked about. Now, the other piece to it is when we look at B vitamins, we also have to talk about the methylation piece, right? Because we know that there's a segment of the population, some say it could be up to 60%, who have a methylation problem, meaning that they have problems converting folate and or B12, some of the B vitamins, and making them active in terms of detoxification, bringing down homocysteine. This is a problem. There's a lot of people who walk around with this that don't know that they have it. And this is a gene typically in the MTHFR gene variation 677TT, which increases the risk of Alzheimer's, okay? So it says here about 1 in 3 people have this gene variant. It impacts risk by raising homocysteine, a toxic amino acid that we know of. It damages the brain and blood vessels. Having a raised homocysteine level also puts you at risk for cardiovascular disease. So again, a lot of people are walking around with this and don't know that they have it. And now they have another risk for Alzheimer's. So let's take a look at some studies on this front. So in a placebo-controlled study of older people with mild cognitive impairment, about a third of participants had the MTHFR variant that increases Alzheimer's risk. But supplementing with B vitamins actively lowered homocysteine in both those with and without this Alzheimer's gene. The B vitamin supplement also arrested further memory decline and slowed the rate of brain shrinkage by 52%. Reducing shrinkage of the Alzheimer's areas of the brain by 9-fold. What drug does that? Think about that, okay? Whether a person did or didn't have this Alzheimer's gene made no difference to the beneficial effect of the B vitamins. So that's B vitamins and methylation. Let's go further now. Let's take a look at omega-3s. Those with adequate omega-3 blood levels had even less brain shrinkage, 73% less than the placebo group. 2 other studies found major protection either by giving B vitamins to those with adequate omega-3 intake or by supplementing omega-3s to those with lower homocysteine levels, further confirming that you need both B vitamins and omega-3 fats to keep neurons healthy. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff here. So we're seeing B vitamins, omega-3s, 2 big powerhouses in terms of reducing your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia and or cognitive decline in general. Huge, huge here. And this is also not only, so we're seeing this with the ApoE4 gene, right? So we're seeing that. So the whole point of the genetic theory that if you have the gene, you can't do anything about it, that's wrong, because we've already seen that. And then people who had a genetic variant, right, with the MTHFR, also saw improvement, huge improvement with nutrition. So again, these gene variants cannot overcome the nutrition piece. And this is what I've been saying since day one of this program. This is huge stuff here, huge stuff. So again, you know, when we look at Alzheimer's, when we look at dementia, obviously the best course of action is prevention. That's always going to be the best course of action, because it's harder to deal with the issue when you already have it, instead of dealing with it before you get it. If you are a person who's tested and you've had the, that gene, right? When you have that gene, or if you have genetic variants or whatever the case may be, this is the time to really get on the nutrition path and make sure your lifestyle is really kicking in here. This is the time. And, you know, when you're younger, you want to deal with it when you're younger. Now, there are people who have dealt with dementia even at younger ages. There are people who deal with dementia and cognitive decline at 30, 35, 40 years old. And it's getting younger and younger the more stuff that we're dealing with in society. You don't want to go that route. You do not want to go that route. You want to make sure you are fortifying yourself with nutrition. So, that being said, and with all those studies that we talked about, I'm going to give you my 5 tips or my 5 suggestions in terms of dealing or supporting your brain and putting you at less risk for cognitive decline or Alzheimer's and dementia. So my first tip is what we've talked about, is diet. Obviously, you want to start with diet. Diet is number one. Diet is what we always start with, right? Healthy fruits and vegetables, right? Getting your antioxidants in. That is the key. The diet is the big thing. That diet is going to include some of the B vitamins, maybe some omega-3s if you're eating fish, if you're eating the good fish, right? If you're eating the salmons and the mackerels and those types of things. And you're getting your B vitamins from your food. Now, those of you who are vegetarians and or vegans, you may not be getting a lot of those B vitamins. Well, then you want to take a look at supplementation. But the big thing first is to make sure you're getting those antioxidants, making sure you're eating those the brain food, and that's number one. Okay, diet is always number one. You have to do that. Take out the processed food, bring in the good whole food, fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. Number two, you want to deal with any and all methylation problems if you may be dealing with that, or if you may not know that you are dealing with that. How do you deal with that? This is where supplementation comes in. This is where smart supplementation comes in. So if you feel like your diet is lacking, or you want to bridge that gap between what you're getting from your diet and supplementation, right? You want to make sure you're fortifying yourself. Get yourself on a good multivitamin and or B complex that has the activated B vitamins. The methylcobalamin, the adenosylcobalamin, the active form of folate, which is methyl tetrahydrofolate or methylfolate. Okay, you don't want cyanocobalamin. You don't want folic acid. You want it to say folate, tetrahydrofolate. You want adenosylcobalamin, those types, methylcobalamin. Those are the ones that are going to make a difference. Those are the ones that are activated, the activated forms. And when you take them in, they will bypass the gene variants, and they will actually help you to lower homocysteine if you have high homocysteine. Remember, if you have high homocysteine, you have 2 big risks here. You have one, which is brain problems, right? Because now you're unable to detoxify. So brain issues, right? You may not be able to detoxify lead or mercury, anything that's in your brain. All these things, you need to be able to detoxify that. Bringing down homocysteine, bringing down inflammation is the big key. B vitamins and the methylation cycle is going to be able to help you with that. But you need the B vitamins to be working properly. You need the folate to be working properly in order for that to happen. Okay, so we have diet, Number one, we have good supplementation, okay? The other supplement is the omegas, right? Omega-3, you want good DHA, at least 500 milligrams of DHA, and you want to make sure it's good quality DHA. Any of the supplements that I recommend, you can take a look at that. The Wellness Resources supplements, they have a great DHA. Take a look at that. 500 milligrams of DHA, and we know that DHA eventually incorporates himself into the eyes, into the brain, okay? Your body loves DHA and it takes it in, okay? And the studies show it takes a little while for the DHA to build up in your system when you haven't had it in a long period of time. So this is why you have to build up your DHA. And once you get it to the point where it starts to make a difference, now you're rocking and rolling, okay? So we have the B vitamins, we have DHA, we have a good multivitamin and or B complex, right? This is what you want. Now, if you want to go on top of that, you can take a look at quercetin. You can take a look at some of the other things. You can take a look at phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine. These are the supplements, okay? These are the good supplements that all work with the brain, help keep your brain moving, help keep the neurons firing, right? All that is key. So diet and supplementation. Number 3, exercise. You got to exercise. Many studies are showing that exercise is extremely beneficial for the brain. We know that you have this rush of endorphins when you exercise. We know that exercise makes you smarter. We know that people have performed great on cognitive tests after they have exercised. We know that there's a sharpness to people who exercise regularly. So at least 3 to 5 days a week, you want 30 to 40 minutes of exercise. You want some good strength training. You want some good cardio. You want something that's going to give you that rush of endorphins. We don't want junk exercise. I mean, walking is great. You want to do some walking too. I would suggest fast walking if you can, but do something. Make yourself active. Exercise is going to be key to this, okay, because it gives you that rush. And plus, it's going to give you the circulation. Circulation going into the brain, right? It's going to cross the blood-brain barrier. It's going to keep your brain nourished. Exercise is key. Number 4, you want to take a look at structure. A lot of people don't talk about this in terms of cognitive health and cognitive decline and or Alzheimer's and dementia. Structure. I talk about structure on the show all the time. You got to take a look at structure. When I say structure, I'm talking about cervical spine. You want to make sure that you have a beautiful signals running between your cervical spine and your brain. If you are someone dealing with a cervical issue, whether it's a cervical deviation, or let's say you're a person who has forward head carriage. A lot of older people have forward head carriage because the muscles in their back of their neck or in the shoulders are weak and cannot hold the head, right? And what happens? Your body is doing everything it can to pull that head back. And this is why you start to get stiffness, you start to get pain. But one of the bigger things that can happen in this case is that it can start to affect the signals that go up and down between the brain and the spine. Okay, this is a big deal. Structural issues is a big deal. So if you have forward head carriage or hyperkyphosis or whatever you want to call it, okay, take a look at that because that is a big deal. Go to a chiropractor, get yourself adjusted. Have the chiropractor take some x-rays, see if there's an issue there, see if there's a deviation, and start to manage that, start to get that back on track. Once you start to get back on track with that, you'll start to see differences in your brain. Now, again, this is a comprehensive approach, right? This is not just one thing. So structure, big deal. If you have a back problem, if you have a cervical problem, all this, remember, it's all related. So take a look at your structural, your neck, your spine, everything, and see if you're having problems there. If you are, get it checked out. Number 5, this is huge, sleep. Sleep is huge. Sleep is the big one, right? Why? You got to sleep. People don't sleep. People just don't. I know a lot of people who don't sleep. They'll go to bed at 2 in the morning and to go to work at 5 or 6. They don't get enough hours of sleep. Now, I know sleep is different for everybody. Not everybody needs the exact amount of sleep. So I get that. But you've got to have sleep for your body, for yourself. You've got to have the right amount of sleep for yourself. You've got to have a regimen. Sleep is important. Why? Because it's the way your body detoxifies. It's your natural detoxification. It's how your lymphatic system, which is connected to your brain, right? You have your lymphatic system and your glymphatic system. Your lymphatic system needs movement in order to move and detoxify. Your glymphatic system needs sleep in order to detoxify that to eventually get everything out. Sleep is huge. Sleep is where your body resets. Sleep is where your brain repairs. This is where the glial cells in your brain really start to go in and repair. This is when they start to get rid of things. This is when your brain starts to renew here and starts to, get a new perspective, right? You wake up and you're feeling energized, you're feeling fresh. Sleep is huge. If you are not sleeping, you're going to have problems with cognition as time goes along. It is an absolute you can bet on it pretty much. So sleep is huge here. So get yourself on a regimen. If you need melatonin, you take melatonin. If you want to take magnesium, you take magnesium. There's many things you can take in terms of helping people sleep. Get off the devices, turn off the television, have the room nice and dark, let the melatonin production in your brain work naturally, and get to sleep. And do whatever you can and establish a regimen. The biggest thing is to get that blue light out, right? Get the TVs out, or at least don't be on the phone. My phone is in the living room a long while before I go to sleep. I don't have any phones in my bedroom because I don't do that. I'm just not. I want my brain, my natural production of melatonin to kick in. It's only going to kick in if it's dark and I'm ready to go. So those are my 5 keys to reducing your risk of cognitive decline. Now, you can also add in a 6th, brain, stimulation, right? You can do puzzles. You can do, games and trivial games. Stimulating each other with friends and stuff like that. Obviously, stimulation, because there's a lot of science that talks about people who are alone also are at high risk for cognitive decline because they're not talking to people. They're not interacting with people. So make sure that you're also stimulating your brain, and you're always stimulating your brain. That's why I say that retirement sometimes is the worst thing you can do, because once you see a lot of people who retire that end up with cognitive decline, that end up with really bad dementia and or Alzheimer's because there's no stimulation anymore. So if I throw in a 6th one, it's brain stimulation. So let's take a look. Let me recap here. We have diets, making sure your diet is good. We have the supplementation, right, with the B vitamins and the omegas, making sure you get good supplements. We have the exercise. You got to exercise. You got to move to stimulate, to rejuvenate, to circulate. You want structure. You want to make sure your structure is okay. Your neck structure, your back structure. If not, get it checked out. You want good sleep for detoxification. You want to get regimented. And then 6, you want brain stimulation. You want to keep your brain stimulated, keep it going, keep it moving, always have something to do, always, just keep it going, okay? If you do these things, at good high levels from when you're young, you're reducing your risk of any of these issues, any of these cognitive issues by a lot. I'm not saying anything that's crazy here. This is just basics, okay? Remember what we saw in these these articles. They were just modifying they were doing very small modifications with B vitamins and omegas and things like that. I'm talking about a whole comprehensive approach that they're not even talking about. So think about what you would reduce your risk by if you take this whole comprehensive approach. So something to think about. I'm hoping I'm leaving you with some good ideas and some things to implement in your life to help stave off cognitive decline. Because remember, it is not a foregone conclusion that when you get old that you are going to have cognitive decline and or dementia and or Alzheimer's. And we know already that the genetic piece is a very tiny fraction of this. And we know with epigenetics, you can change it, right? So you can do all these things. It's up to you. Take the responsibility and do it. There's many ways to do it. There's enough information out there. It's just a matter of you grabbing it and going with it. So my 2 cents, I hope this helps you, and I hope you got a lot out of this. All right, I want to thank you for joining me as always this week. It's always a pleasure and an honor to bring this information to you. And hope this helps you in many, many different ways. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves. Make sure you take care of each other. And as always, control your health. Have a great day.